Cinema has this wonderful way of creating a snapshot of a time, a place, or a memory that was forgotten. When we see films that represent our youth, we feel a sense of longing and nostalgia. Coming-of-age films capture what we perceive as being times of great change. They show parts of ourselves that we relate and sympathise with. Take for example the film Boyhood, Richard Linklater's meditation of the passage of time. It was released at the perfect moment for me. The film starts as a 6-year-old schoolboy and ends with an 18-year-old college student. Everything in between struck a chord because it was my childhood era. Fashion, fads, music and cultural events. It was such a great cinematic parting gift, because at the time of release I was ready to start university myself. This film felt personal to me, but there are films that feel alien in terms of their time and place. Persepolis is an animated drama of one girl's struggle against depression, war, and identity. The film's stark, beautiful animation shows us the universal theme of escaping from turmoil, finding first love, and confronting our repercussions. The scene in which Marjan tries to blend in with her surroundings by attending a hardcore show shows that during our adolescence we co-opt different identities to see whether or not it suits us. Some traits remain, some disappear. A fundamental aspect of these films is to have the character change from beginning to end. A metamorphosis must happen. The character's attitude and understanding must be different, otherwise the whole thing will be pointless. It can be expressed in a comedic or dramatic way. It's great to have both, dramas with small amounts of levity, and comedies with earned moments of reflection. A lot of these coming-of-age films usually clock in within the 2.5 hour mark. It's rare that we see a 4-hour film that reflects the longing and loneliness of adolescence, a sense of a collective identity being misguided and mistreated. There is a particular film that represents this in the most perfect way: Edward Yang's 1991 epic, A Brighter Summer Day. So, how did I come across this film? During a cold February term at university, I had just finished a big project. Due to the lack of sleep and having a steady diet of Red Bull for the past few days, I was looking like a meal at the end of RoboCop. My go-to website, when I was procrastinating, was the Criterion website, looking through interviews and cover art of these great films. When I was scouring through the website, I found lists of their back catalogue. Some of my favourites I'll link in the description. When I looked through the list entitled Growing Pains, it contained a deluge of great coming-of-age cinema, like Moonrise Kingdom, Criterion, and A Brighter Summer Day. When I looked at the stills, I felt like I'd seen this film before, a distant memory that had faded away. I needed to see this film, so I bolted out into the cold, dark weather on my terrible bike, and lo and behold, HMV had just received a shipment of Criterion films. In 2009, the Film Foundation gathered the resources to salvage this film. The work consisted of scanning the original print, stabilising the image, and then going back and removing damage and chemical staining. In total, the Criterion collection made more than 50,000 individual fixes to bring the film back to life. At one point you could only see it from a copy of a Laserdisc, which had burnt in subtitles. What you'll see now is the difference. It went from looking like this to this. The work is unbelievable. It's like looking at two different films. They completely breathed new life into the image. The faded monochromatic hues have been restored to the original artistic intention. The colours, the detail, it all been given such depth and clarity once again. The film was directed by Edward Yang. His work is introspective and breathtaking. He focuses on the bond we have with our family and the clash between the old generation and the new. Unfortunately, he did not get to have a large body of work due to cancer taking him in 2007. His final film, Yi Yi, explores the past and present, how it can affect people's lives for better or worse. When Yang was a teenager, he remembered a killing in his local village. A teenage schoolboy murdered a schoolgirl. This crime would be the basis for the story. He and his peers of the Taiwanese New Wave all remember this incident quite distinctly. What they found strange was none of their parents remembered the brutal murder. 1960s Taiwan was a period of great change. Since 1949 it was known as the Republic of China. This is because the nationalist government under Chiang Kai-shek retreated to Taiwan. Essentially they lost the civil war against the communists in mainland China. This means China became the People's Republic and Taiwan became the Republic. In 1905, Taiwan was under Japanese rule. Then when the war ended, it was reverted to Chinese sovereignty.
外面水果店好讨厌，怎么音乐越放越大声？跟日本人打了8年仗，现在去日本房子听日本歌。
Everyone we see in this film is part of the generation that fled from communism to have a free life. Tensions arise from the long-term residents to the new generation who move in. A struggle to find an identity. A theme that is quite familiar to Yang.
上哪？好，然后靠紧了往上瞄啊！抠啊，抠！怎样过瘾吧？哎，退堂，再换一个。
Our protagonist is Xiao Se. He's a delinquent who frequently butts heads with authority and can't follow the path that is laid out for him. The very first scene shows his father begging the education board to accept him into school. He ends up at night school. Due to overpopulation in 1949, classes were split into day and night, the days for honor students and night being for troubled youth. Se's a loner. His demeanour is reserved and distant. Chang Chen's performance echoes James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause, a misunderstood youth who clashes with the systems of authority. His best friend is Kat. He's a sharp-mouthed, hopeful singer who tries to keep the balance between the warring factions. Kat and Sir interact with the Little Park Gang, which is led by Sly, a violent sociopath who becomes the antagonist of the film. He currently holds de facto leadership due to the absence of the main leader, Honey, who has fled for murdering a member of the 217 gang, sworn enemies of Little Park. Now, it wouldn't be a coming-of-age story if it didn't have a love interest. Ming is a promiscuous force within the film. Playing on elements of noir, she's a girl who is wrapped up with different members of the local gangs. This begets jealousy and violence.
真害羞哎，要我洗呀？啊？破钢笔，没钱出来泡Miss啊！操你妈个逼！我还把你这种糗蛋当哥们！他妈的什么玩意儿啊！你跟我来这套啊！你想找死啊！小杂碎！你他妈的有种就不要不敢来！你来几次我扁你几次！
Even though most of the film is set within the walls of night school, we do get a glimpse into Sir's home life. His father, who is played by Chang Chen's actual father, is a minor government official. He tries to teach Sir about the importance of standing up for what's right. His mother, who is played by top Chinese actress Elaine Jin, tries to hold the family together the best way she can. Sir's siblings are more or less within the foreground, apart from his brother who falls into debt with the 217 gang. These characters are mostly played by first-time actors, which is impressive because they bring such subtlety and pathos to their performances. The world in which they inhabit is confusing and alien, and they do a great job of expressing this.
自家种的上酒个打手哦，以前上海人读书的迭个套，老早坏坏脱了，尤其侬个脾气，做事体稍微用点弹性嘛。
One of the fundamental themes within this film is the collective identity. Everyone carves a path that will lead to salvation or despair. Identity is such an important aspect within the coming-of-age genre. It needs to be shown in a way that's realistic and convincing. One of my favourite ways in which this is expressed is in Barry Jenkins' film Moonlight, when Wan talks to Chiron about his path in life.
At some point, you gotta decide for yourself who you gonna be. Can't let nobody make that decision for you.
Or the final confrontation in Mike Leigh's slice of life drama, Life is Sweet.
Exploited! You're not prepared to work, full stop.
You've accepted Nat as a plumber and you didn't like that at first.
No, I didn't. I didn't like it. But I can see now I was wrong because she's happy.
I don't know what I want to do yet.
The father figure is a great way to show the similarities between the old generation and the new. Within this film, Sir and his father are two individuals who try to be righteous and honourable. However, Sir is unjustly punished for his slight infractions, and his father is subject to torturous interrogations for crimes he didn't commit. Due to this, they feel socially isolated and never really fit into a gang. In Yang's version of Taiwan, people who don't conform suffer the consequences of their actions, past and present. Because of the runtime, we get to explore these themes in such crystal clear detail. Edward Yang had backstories for nearly 100 characters. Yang thought it to be so dense he even considered at one point to scrap the idea of adapting this into a film, instead bringing it to a 300 episode television series. Having this much breathing space gave the opportunity to evoke just theme in certain scenes. He wouldn't have to rely on just moving the plot forward. He lets the film breathe. There is a great excerpt from this conversation Roger Ebert and Hayao Miyazaki had, which I think applies to Yang's method of filmmaking. I told him I love the gratuitous motion in his films. Instead of every movement being dictated by the story, sometimes people would just sit for a moment, or sigh or gaze at the running stream, or do something extra, not to advance the story, but only to give the sense of time and place and who they are. We have a word for that in Japanese, he said. It's called ma, emptiness. It's there intentionally. He then clapped his hands 3 or 4 times. The time in between clapping is ma. If you just have non-stop action with no breathing space at all, it's just busyness. The first half of the film mostly deals with setting up certain emotional payoffs and building the world. You feel like you live there. One reviewer described it perfectly by saying, it's a film you can get lost in. We follow these characters' lives and get a real glimpse of what this time period was like. During the 1960s, American youth culture was very prevalent within Taiwan. John Wayne movies, slick back hair with slick suits. Most importantly, the prevalence of rock music, especially Elvis. His presence within this film gives a touchstone to the emotion of some of these characters. The melancholia of Are You Lonesome Tonight really complements the despondency of some of the film's characters. Aspects of youth culture have great transcendence with young audiences. I remember as a teenager wanting certain items of clothing just to have a connection to the culture that was around me. Another aspect we see explored is Taiwanese gangs. The gangs within this film are all disillusioned and filled with angst. Due to the mainlanders not fitting in, they create a collective identity to appease their surroundings. They set themselves apart from the adults as well, often described as hooligans or misunderstood based on their appearance. We've seen this time and time again, like in City of God or A Clockwork Orange. Recently, Andrew Onwabulu's Blue Story perfectly captures what the risk to reward lifestyle is like within a gang. It's very urgent of this moment. This scene in particular resonates with the harsh reality of being within a gang.
How many times did you take them trips? I was walking around with a 3-inch spin. How many times did I take that risk? How many times did they shoot and miss? How many times did they touch civilians, then try rap and claim that shit? How many lives been taken shit? How many times did you take on strips? How many bells did I have in the chamber and that pussy on still got hit? How many matches done got ripped? How many times did we locked with things? How many times did I beg my friend again and again to drop me that stick? I got it, so I did. Since then it's never left my hip. I put Rambo blazing chest. I put flick nav straight in necks. With a rap out aim for your head. If you see me then you're looking at death. Got them all scared, they're looking at their mates like who's getting taken next. You don't really wanna meet your end. Nigga don't slip before you meet your friends. And if you talk, I don't need to pretend. I don't play fair, man, play with gangs. And I bring cash and porn like the pagans them. No case, no trace, no prints. You will never take that risk.
When the film moves into its third and final act, without giving too much away, a transgression of violence has a psychological rift that plummets the film into a steep pit of melancholia. The showdown between gangs is usually within the final few minutes of the film, but with A Brighter Summer Day we get to see the ramifications of such actions. The use of mid-shots and overemphasis of long takes really provide this film with a sense of realism. Loss of innocence and injustice, in my opinion, has never been shown so eloquently. The heightened melodrama of teen movies is stripped away to show something barer, more honest.
你的心好像不太平静。
不要跟我传教。
A Brighter Summer Day is everything I want out of a coming-of-age film. A world that is fully realised, melancholic soundtrack, beautiful cinematography, and believable characters. It has such a focused attention to detail that it surpasses anything I've ever seen within the medium. It's a film that was salvaged and restored with such clarity that it serves as a reminder of the importance of film preservation. Yang gave us his heart and soul to show us his time and place. If he was still with us, I know he would still be making very poignant and subtle pieces. Thank you.